This video is sponsored by Pouch.
Alright guys, how's it going? Welcome back. As you might have noticed, the cost of fuel has spiralled out of control. It's now more expensive than any of us could have imagined. In most parts of the UK, it sits at over £2 a litre. It's crazy. In fact, can we have a moment's silence please for all those people with stupid big V8s? Anyway, in today's video, I thought I'd do a video about the most economical cars you could buy for under £5,000. I know what you're thinking, this is real edge of your seat entertainment here, isn't it? Gripping is what it is. On a serious note, did you know that most conventional combustion engines work at only a 30% rate of efficiency? Meaning that 70% of that energy is just wasted. And I hate waste. Right then, well, number one on this list is the taxi driver's favourite. It's the Toyota Prius. This is a car that gets a lot of flack. Most petrol heads love to hate it. But I'm not one of those petrol heads. I really like the Prius. I always have done. I think it's clever. I even had one as my own car for a short period. That's how much I like them. If you do a lot of city or town driving, they just make sense. They whiz along in silence and barely use any fuel. What's not to like? Alright, the shape's not the most attractive and a lot of strangers will think that you're a do-gooder, but let's focus on the positives, and there are quite a few. They're very reliable, firstly. They're smooth to drive. They're all automatic, so no gears to change. They're very quiet because for a lot of the time you're just running around on battery power alone. And here in the UK, they're cheap to tax. Early examples only cost £10 a year to tax, and later ones were free. And it'll do 55 miles per gallon wherever you go. For £5,000 you'll get a really nice clean Mark II with sensible mileage, or a slightly higher mileage Mark III. I'd try and go for a T4 or a T-Spirit model, that way you'll get all the extras you could possibly wish for. Yes, I know they're slow, but most of the time you're just sat in traffic anyway, so who cares? Speaking of reliability, they are generally very reliable. But if you're unlucky, you could have one with a failed battery pack. But nowadays there are lots of companies springing up that will repair this or restore it for you, so I wouldn't let that put you off. Something else to bear in mind, a few years ago there was a spate of catalytic converter thefts, so that's something you need to watch out for. Still wouldn't put me off buying one though. Right, on to number two. Now that is the Honda Insight, which is quite similar to the Prius, and again, I've actually owned one of these cars myself. You see, I haven't always had big flash cars. You've got to cut your cloth accordingly, haven't you? Well, mine was a 2011 and it was a top spec, I think it was called an executive model, so it had everything you could possibly wish for. Heated leather seats, air conditioning, sat-nav, reverse camera, it had it all. Back in those days, 6 or 7 years ago, it would only cost £40 to fill the tank, and that full tank of fuel would get me from Manchester to London and back again. You really couldn't beat it. Depending on the year of registration, tax is either free or £10, so it won't break the bank, and it'll do in excess of 50 miles per gallon wherever you go. It isn't as smooth to drive as a Prius, and it doesn't feel as well built. They feel a little bit tinnier than a Prius, but they're not bad cars at all. I don't like the annoying speed warning thing that they had, but let's face it, in an Insight that isn't going to come on very often. And I also didn't like the fiddly infotainment screen. But those two things aside, they are really good cars and I would recommend them. £5,000 will get you something like a 2009 model with around 100,000 miles on the clock. And again, I wouldn't be put off by a high mileage example. As long as it's got good service history, they do handle the miles well. Number three, now this is probably the least exciting car on this list. It's the Chevrolet Spark. Now I've mentioned the Spark before in these kinds of videos, but I think they're really good cars. We use one as our own courtesy car at work, and it's done 80-odd thousand miles, and it has never, touch wood, never let us down. They're cheap to tax. I think it only costs £30 a year. £35 used to fill the tank, now it costs more like £45, £50, but still cheap, and it'll do 55 miles per gallon. I know it can trace its DNA back to Daewoo, but that thing gets abused, I assume, by everybody who borrows it, and it just never lets us down. The other good thing with the Spark is that you don't need to use your full £5,000 budget. £3,000 will get you a nice one. Whilst we're on the subject of saving money, let me show you this. Whenever I'm ordering anything online, I always use Pouch. Now Pouch is a free desktop browser extension which automatically finds and applies the best discount codes while you're shopping online, and it can save you a lot of money. For example, if I go to Euro Car Parts, and let me look for some parts for an Audi TT. So I want a new fuel filter, new brake pads and new brake discs. Add those to basket. When I check out, up pops Pouch and it applies the best discount code. In this case it saved me £112.32. And even if there are no live discount codes at the time of your purchase, you can still earn things called Pouch points from participating retailers, which can later be redeemed for gift cards. What's good is that Pouch works with over 3,000 UK companies, which is more than any other similar product.
It works with companies such as Euro Car Parts, Halfords, Quick Fit, so there's something for everybody.
All you do is download it for free and then pin it to your browser, and it'll automatically hunt for the best discount codes. I'll leave the link below in the video description so you can check it out for yourselves, but I always use it when I'm shopping online. So get Pouch for free by clicking the link in the video description. Right, on to number 4, the Suzuki Celerio. Yes, I know it has a stupid name and it will not help your chances in finding a sexual partner, but they are very cheap to run. Very, very, very cheap to run. For example, guess how much the road tax is here in the UK? Have you guessed? 0. Absolutely nothing at all. And it'll do 55 miles per gallon, wherever you go, however you drive it. In fact, even better than that, if you drive it very steadily on a motorway run, you'll get close to 70 miles per gallon. And it only has a 35 litre tank, so it'll only cost you £70 to fill it. Not bad in these strange times. The only downside is you'll have to tell people you drive something called a Celeriac. But on the upside, most people won't know what one is. And I suppose you just get a plain looking Suzuki key, so you could tell people you've got a Hayabusa. Prices in the UK start at around £4,500, but you'll have to spend around £5,000 to get yourself a half decent one. Number 5. This next car is so slow you'll be late for every single meeting and every single appointment for the rest of your life. But it is so fuel efficient, I couldn't do a list like this and not include it. It's the Volkswagen Polo 1.2 turbo diesel Blue Motion. Its name's probably the most exciting thing about it, and that's not very exciting. But it's capable of nearly 90 miles per gallon on a steady motorway run. I mean, to be fair, it'll have to be a steady run because it's not capable of anything else. It's very slow. So slow, in fact, 0 to 60 takes a very leisurely 14 seconds. But on the upside, it is free to tax. I guess the government did that just out of sympathy. If you drive it sensibly, you'll average, bear in mind this is average, you'll average 65 miles per gallon. I just think that's seriously impressive. Be warned though, if you do lots of short trips, I wouldn't recommend one of these, because diesel engines take a lot longer to get warmed up. They only become really efficient once they're warmed up, and if you do lots of short trips and keep turning the engine off and back on again, it won't be at its optimum performance. Number 6. Next up is the Porsche Panamera 4.8 GT. No, just kidding. It's the Citroen C1, 1 litre. Now that's the same as the Peugeot 107 and the Toyota Aygo. They're incredibly light, and don't forget excess weight kills efficiency. They have a 990cc engine which was originally built by Daihatsu, and it is bulletproof. From 2012 here in the UK they're free to tax, but even the older models were only 20 quid a year to tax, so it won't break the bank. I've sold 2 of these cars to my cousins in the last few years, and nothing's gone wrong with them, and they've done 55 miles per gallon. They're really great cars. Yes, I know they're boring, and you can have lots of little issues with things like boot seals and water leaks, and the interior door handles cracking and falling off, but everything's cheap to repair and cheap to fix. They also have a small fuel tank, so in the olden days, £35 would fill the tank. Now that's probably more like 60, 65. Still cheap-ish compared to lots of other things. 2.5 to 3 grand will get you a decent one. If you can afford to spend up to 5, then you'll get a Mark II, which are even better. Right, on to number 7. Now number 7 is the Toyota Auris Hybrid. This is the Prius for people who don't want people to know that they're in a Prius. This is the Prius for people who eat gluten and meat. Cleverly, it looks just like a standard hatchback, but underneath it uses the same 1.8 litre petrol 4-cylinder engine and battery pack as used in the Mark III Prius, which means it's capable of 55 miles per gallon wherever you go, and it's free to tax. They're all automatic, so even your grandmother could drive it, and if you go for a T4 or T-Spirit model, it'll come with all the stuff you could possibly need. Reverse camera, sat-nav, heated seats, all that sort of stuff. £5,000 will get you a decent example, and they're good, solid, sturdy, reliable cars. Right, on to the last one, the one you've all been waiting for. Now this, joking apart, is probably the most interesting one on this list. It's the quirkiest and probably the most sporty looking. It's the Honda CR-Z. They look cool, so you're not going to look like a retired geography teacher, and they're all manual, so perfect if you're a youth. The styling harks back to the old CRXs of the 80s and 90s, you know, like the one Jamie Lee Curtis drove in True Lies. But the CR-Z looks fit for the 21st century. They just look cool, there's no other word for it. On top of that, they're cheap to tax, it'll only cost you £20 a year. They're well built, reliable, and it'll do 55 miles per gallon around town and 65 on a motorway run. Okay, they're not the most thrilling to drive, but what it lacks in outright speed, it more than makes up for in character and appearance. Again, £5,000 will get you a nice one. Well, thank you once again for watching. I hope that list was helpful. If you enjoyed the video, give it a thumbs up. Make sure you subscribe if you haven't done already. We're nearly at 200,000 subscribers, which is just mind-blowing. So yeah, cheers guys. Oh, don't forget to check out Pouch. I'll leave the link below in the video description. So yeah, see you next time.